And welcome back to Chicago Bulls Insider. Today, we are talking about Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry and if they can take the next step forward as players this upcoming season. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Bazelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. Make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we're talking about Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips. Time to take the next step forward this season. All right, so look, I think that both of these players are in a prime position to take steps forward as players. I think that this season there is going to be the need for energy and defense, and I think that both of these players can definitely fit that role. It's just going to be a matter of can they do this as far as stepping into that role, but more so consistency. And so let's go ahead and start with Julian Phillips here. And so with Julian Phillips, I think that he's probably a little bit more closer to really carving out a major role for himself, maybe a little bit more than just Dalen Terry right now. I think that with Julian Phillips, look, for him, it was only his second year in the league, and so he's going into his third season. And I just loved what I saw from Julian Phillips in year number 2 for me, because I thought that he showed definitely some confidence in knocking down the three-point shot. I liked what I saw from him at times on the defensive end. And then when you're talking about just the style of play that the Chicago Bulls like to play with this up and down style, he was great as far as just filling the lane and just you could just see the athlete with Julian Phillips. And so that's why I'm super excited to see him fill the wing and just devastate defenses coming down that way. But I think for him to take the next step forward as a player offensively, he's going to have to be a player that's more comfortable, I think, putting the basketball on the deck. I think that was the one thing that I wanted to see from Julian Phillips, really was just his ability to now attack closeouts and things like that. So can he attack closeouts, maybe get to a mid-range? Can he attack closeouts and get to the free throw line? Like, I think that that's really the next step for Julian Phillips, because I do think that you see that he got some starts last season. You see that the minutes went up significantly for him last season as well. And so I think that he's definitely earned the trust of Billy Donovan. And so I think that him and Dalen Terry, their calling card is going to be defense, which I think that Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry are willing defenders. And I think that they both take a step forward in that department. But I think the key for either of these players taking a huge step is going to be carving out that role offensively. He's a little bit more closer. You can see the percentages went up. And so it wasn't spectacular, but you see that his free throw percentage went up to the 78.9. So that's a good thing to see. 3-point percentage has got to go up some more. So 32.7%. So you want to see him go up some more there, but still encouraged. And then also too, you see that his field goal percentage went up to 44.6. And so this is something that he's going to have to continue to get better at, continue to keep working. But I do think that Julian Phillips, man, he really has a chance here to take a step forward, especially for, a team that's looking for defense. And so, like I said, Billy Donovan is certainly going to look for him, I think, to come off that bench probably first before Dalen Terry. But I think that that's going to be the key aspect for him taking a step forward. And so next person I wanted to look at here was Dalen Terry. And so with Dalen Terry, I thought that he also showed some great signs last year, just like Julian Phillips. And I just love the energy that you get with Dalen Terry. And so I just think for him, the first thing that he's going to have to do is just focus that energy a little bit more, because I think at times, he's a little bit sped up. And so you want to see him slow down a little bit. But I do think that the game is starting to kind of slow down a bit more, based off what he looked like when he first came in. Make no mistake about it. I think that he's still a bit of a development project here for the Bulls, but he showed some upside. And I loved at times just what we saw from him, mainly defensively, the energy that he provides. And so just like Julian Phillips, and just repeating the point, these guys are going to have to bring a ton of energy. They're going to have to be the Lou Dort. You're going to have to be like the Thompson twins, the one that plays for Detroit and for the Rockets. Like, you're going to have to be that type of player that's really just a utility player. Like, you could do a lot of different things. And so, much like Julian Phillips, I think that Dalen Terry has the athleticism. I think that he's a guy that can certainly fill the wing. And I think with him, I like that he's more of a like kind of a guard forward than maybe what Julian Phillips is. And so for him, I think that you could see him being like kind of that point forward type of player here for the Chicago Bulls. Now, he's still got to develop into that. But with him, I think that just like Julian Phillips, you see that his percentages went up. And so you do see that he did have a slight increase in the points. You see also, too, with the blocks and the steals, those go up slightly. And then, too, the free throw percentage, so 71% there. And then the 35.6% from three, I think that was a huge jump for him. I like that. And so I think he's going to have to continue to go with that. I think that is how he definitely sees some more minutes this season. And then you see the slight increase with the minutes. And so not as big a jump as you saw with Julian Phillips. And so I think that's more so too Billy Donovan with the trust with him. And so I think he's going to have to show that, he can be trusted here. But what I like about Dalen Terry is he continues to put in the work. And so one of the things that I read here on Bleacher Nation is that he's working with Peter Patton. And so that is huge because Peter Patton was really instrumental in helping this young Bulls team as far as shooting the three-point shot last season. I mean, the Bulls finished with the 13th highest success rate at 36.7% here. And also, too, they drained a record-breaking 1,266 threes over 82 games. And so, this is a guy that certainly knows how to get the best out of players. And so everybody, was kind of looking at that firing here of Peter Patton. But it's good to see that, you see Dalen Terry wanting to put in that work and recognizing what Peter Patton did for him. And so I think that you're going to see that here coming into camp. But I think that for both of these players, they're really going to have a chance to take a step forward because in yesterday's video, I talked about this, with Patrick Williams possibly slipping down the depth chart. And I do think that you have to factor these two players in there. And so let's see what happens if Billy Donovan is going to go ahead and continue to roll these players out. At this point in time, look, the roster has already gotten younger. And I think that one of the things that the Bulls are going to have to do is you really need to find out exactly what you have. Because, if you go and you trade somebody off and then they eventually develop into a good piece and you didn't really give them a shot, that I think is an issue right there. And so at this point in time, with the Bulls really trending towards, I think, being a play-in situation again, I think you have some time and you definitely have some opportunities to let Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips try to figure it out. If they cannot, then you can go ahead and simply move on because, with Dalen Terry, this is a contract year for him. And so this is going to be a big year for him at this point in time with Julian Phillips. I mean, he's coming in now and he's got to get the qualifying offer before he heads into restricted free agency. With Julian Phillips, actually, this is Julian Phillips. And so with Dalen Terry, with him, he's going to head into restricted free agency if the Bulls go ahead and give him a qualifying offer. And so he's going to be in a contract situation. And with Julian Phillips, you still have some time here before you have to think about that club option. But you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. Does Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry take a major step forward? I definitely think that they can certainly, be impactful players for this team and really kind of carve out a role here into this young core. And so we'll see how that works out too with Noah Essengay coming off the bench. And so super excited to see these guys once we get to training camp. You guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking here about Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips. And as we always say, look, go Bulls. And I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.